Welcome, third graders, to Fairview Schoolhouse. This is the one-room schoolhouse. It was built in about 1870, and it actually was a working schoolhouse way back then. And as you can see, it's a one-room schoolhouse. First of all, boys and girls would be separated. We'd have the boys that would be sitting on this side, and the girls would be sitting on this side. And as you can see, all of the desks are all connected, and you come in and you put your seat down like that very, very quietly. So that's one of the big differences. Another big difference is there's no electricity. The school was lit by oil lanterns, and that was the job of the teacher in the morning. She would come in, she would start the lanterns for the kids, and also we have a stove over here. She would put corn cobs, get the fire going, and she would actually put in charcoal too to get the building all nice and warm. All right, so let's just take a little tour of the building. So come on with me. All right, some of the other differences is the class would be every grade would be in here. You would have kindergartners through 8th grade all in the same room. And the teacher would work with the kids in small groups, maybe up here, and also back there, some of the older kids would be helping out. The number one rule would be silence is golden. The kids would sit in their desks with their hands folded at attention, and they would not speak unless the teacher spoke to them first. And then if the teacher would ask them a question, the kids would have to stand, and the girls would have to curtsy like this and say, "Mistress Linnefelter," and then they could answer the teacher. And the boys would have to stand when called on, and they would bow to the teacher, and then they would answer the teacher's questions. The punishments were pretty severe. And one of the punishments was if they violated any of those rules, they would have to come over here and sit in the corner, and the teacher would put the dunce cap on the kids' heads. They would have to sit. I'm going to turn. They would sit like this with the dunce cap on their head. Kind of embarrassing, really. And another punishment would be the kids would have to come over here, and the teacher would draw a circle. Kids would have to put their nose in the circle like this and stand there. So it was pretty serious business. And also, the teacher had a stick like this, a pointer like this, and she may ask you to put your knuckles out like that, and she may rap on your knuckle like that. So aren't you glad that your teachers aren't strict like that these days? Okay, here's our daily schedule that we would be going through. We would start with the flag raising, and then we would go on into reading. And I'm going to show you an example of what the reading consisted of. The kids would have a McGuffey reader like this, depending on what their level was. I'm going to open it up. This is a real easy one. And as you can see, the text in there is kind of strange. Some of it's half cursive and half printing. But each of the stories that the kids would read, there was always a lesson or a moral to the story. So after they would read it, they would discuss what the lesson was. And the kids would have to come up and stand in front of the classroom, and they would be toeing the mark. They would put their toes on the line right here, and they would read in unison with the teacher. And the teacher might be working with a group here, and she would have another group back there. And that would be the lesson for the readers. And these things were called the McGuffey readers. All right, the next thing on our schedule then would be geography. And geography is the study of land and water. Geography was kind of cool. What the teacher would do is she would pull out some of these really old, fascinating maps like this. And these things are all wood. And what the students would do is they would name all of the different continents, and then they would name the different oceans, and then the teacher would pull out a map of the United States, and the kids would have to name different states. Another subject would be penmanship, and penmanship really kind of was difficult. The students had their own little jar of ink, and it would sit in the inkwell right here, and they would practice dipping the ink, the quill, into the ink, and then they would write here on this. And also they would use a pen, and they would do the same thing. They would dip it in here, and then they would write on here. And there would be so much ink all over everything, as you can see, all over these desks. And then what they would do is they would have a blotter, and they would have to, after they would write, they would have to blot up the ink. And they would practice push-pulls, they would practice ovals, all kinds of things. And can you imagine having to write a whole paper like that? The teacher said you need to write a paragraph, and using the ink and the quill, it'd take you a long time. And also, the boys would like to take the pigtails of the girls, and if they had a girl that was sitting in front of them like this, they would take their pigtail and they would dip it in the ink, and they would get in big trouble for that. So anyway, that's that. That's the big difference between school today and years ago was there was no bathroom. The kids did not have a bathroom, and they would have to go out to the outhouse and use the bathroom. So if you would have come and visited it, you would have spent the whole day here not being able to go to the bathroom unless you want to go to the outhouse. But I do have to show you one secret. We have a secret door here. And this opens up too. We do have modern plumbing here, so you would have been able to go to the bathroom. What would happen at the end of a school day is the teacher was the janitor. She not only was a teacher, she was the janitor, and she had many, many jobs. And some of the jobs she had the kids help her with. All of the seat backs would have to be replaced back up. The floor would have to be swept, and all of the lanterns would have to be filled with oil for the next day. And the corn cobs and the charcoal would all have to be replaced. So now it's time for the teacher to go home. Well, the teacher, a lot of times, would go home with one of the students and spend a whole month at their house. The teachers weren't married back then, and so the teachers would go home and spend a whole month at maybe your house. Can you imagine your teacher living with you for a whole month? Thank you for visiting Fairview School. I hope you had a great day back in the 1870s.